All right, everyone, let's get started. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Christine Rosenberg. I am a Quinyx training expert and project manager. And with us on the line, we should have Carl.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Geiger. I'm Chief Product Officer at Quinyx.
And we are here today to present to you the new user interface we're calling Neo. If you haven't heard about Neo yet, you are definitely in the right place. We are going to present to you our new interface today. It's going to be basically a demo of the system. We are also going to talk about whatever resources you guys have available to you to do this upgrade, to transition to the new interface. If you know Quinyx Classic, if you know what we're referring to, the classic version of Quinyx, the old version or the current version that you're working in, Neo is very, very easy. There's just a couple of things that we want to highlight that are a little bit different in this new interface. And we also, we're going to go through the demo, but we've also allotted a big chunk of time at the end for you guys to actually ask questions. So there's a lot of us on the call today, so we will keep you muted. But when we do open up for questions later in the session, you'll have the ability to type in questions for us, and we'll answer them as we get them. But so you can type your questions, but I will actually wait to answer questions until the end of the session. So Classic versus Neo. Again, Neo is our new Quinyx user interface. It is completely ready for you guys who, if you are a scheduler or what we refer to as a local manager in Quinyx today, you can start using Neo today, or even yesterday if you'd wanted to. You can forget all about Classic, log into Neo, and just start using that. So why are we building this new interface, or why have we built this new interface? Well, you'll find that Neo is a lot faster. There's a lot better performance in Neo than what you might be used to in Classic. You might have noticed that Classic can be a little slow at times, slow to load pages. So there's been a lot of work around performance in the new system Neo. Neo is also very mobile. So if you are a person who is running around on a shop floor, for example, you can use Neo on an iPad, on a tablet. So it's a very mobile experience here. You can do all of your scheduling on a tablet. You can even actually log into Neo on your phone, although the screen might be a little small for that. So Neo is replacing the admin version of Classic. It's not replacing it's not replacing WebPunch. WebPunch will still be the same if you're utilizing WebPunch today. The end users, the mobile app, will also not change. So the only thing that's changing for you as a scheduler is the admin portal of Classic. So now we'll start using Neo instead. Again, if you know Classic well from before, you've been using it for a while, this transition to Neo is not going to be a big deal at all. You'll hopefully only see the improvements that we've made to the system. But we did want to invite you here to answer your questions, as well as explaining a few new functionalities that we've built in Neo to improve the system, which we will also continue to do. The development of Neo is happening at a rapid pace. Classic will be no more at the end of this year. So again, the reason we want to push you to start using Neo or upgrading to Neo as soon as possible is, first of all, you'll have a chance to engage with us and send us feedback and tell us how to improve the system. But also it won't be a last minute rush job for you once we start shutting Classic down by the end of 2020. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into to do a demo of the Neo system, and then after that, again, we'll talk about what resources you have and open up for questions. And Carl, if there's anything you want to add, just feel free to jump in.
Yep.
So you are currently logging into app.quinyx.com. You are used to the app.quinyx.com interface, but now you can log in to web.quinyx.com. So web.quinyx.com will take you to Neo, and you have the exact same login information that you have in Classic in the new interface. So your email address and then the password that you've chosen. Let me, make this a little prettier. All right, so I just logged into Neo, and it takes me to sort of the dashboard view that, again, that you're also used to in Classic, but a new and improved version. So the dashboard is basically the stuff that's interesting for you as a scheduler. On the left-hand side, we have upcoming events, shift bookings. Kurt is turning 51 also as a birthday. We have notices of interest. Somebody has submitted a notice of interest through the phone saying that she would be interested in picking up extra shifts, but Marie has also applied for vacation. So all of the upcoming events. Then we also have some staffing information here. I can look at a week, scheduled versus worked, day, week, month. And also, if you're optimizing your staffing with our budget and forecast modules, you can see how well you're doing at optimizing. And we also have our numbers here. How many things do you as a scheduler have to look at? Leave applications, etc. And then if you have, again, if you're using our budget and forecast module, if you have sales coming into the system, you can see your forecasted versus your actual sales. So if you are not, for example, uploading your current sales into Quinyx, this graph here will be empty. Right now, these widgets, these 4 widgets that we call them, these little windows, are not customizable, but as we move forward in developing Neo, you will actually be able to choose what you see on this dashboard. So that's the dashboard. Then as I move across, what we've done a lot with Neo is try to make it more user-friendly and fewer clicks. You might have noticed in Classic, you have to click in and in to various tabs and various menus and various buttons to get into certain things. We've tried to make Neo a lot more user-friendly in its design. So as you can see, we have a schedule and time menu here. So in Classic, you're used to having schedule in one tab and time in another. So we've consolidated them here with 2 options, which we'll come back to. People tab, where you set up your employees, where you add agreement templates, etc. All of that's done in People. And then we have the Analytics tab, which is basically all of our reports. So the reporting tab, or whatever reports you use in Classic today, they'll be under the Analytics tab. As I move across up here, whomever you are in the system, whatever access rights you have, you'll be able to see what you have access to in this dropdown. So right now I'm Axel Rose. I am a local manager of Christine's HQ. So when I log in, I can see Christine's HQ, and I can also see the sections underneath it. So if you're currently utilizing our sections functionality, then then these would be visible here as well. And I can go and I want to see the schedule just for the shop floor, for example. If you're a district manager, you would have access to maybe perhaps the Stockholm district and then all the units that belong to Stockholm. So depending on who you are is what you'll see in this drop-down list. And if you're a person who has access to everything and you're a large company with a lot of units or district sections, you can always search for what you want here. Moving along, we have our queue mails. Exactly the same functionality as we have in Classic today. They'll be right here, and you can create your new queue mails if you want to send something. If I go on the very far right hand side, so your user information, the drop down there, it tells me who I am, which is very nice. The unit that I'm logged into. Then this, also what you see here will be depending on what your internal super users, what your organization has decided that you can see and do. So this may differ for some of you, but I'll show you what I see or what the general settings would be. So the group settings option allows me to administer my staff. For example, if I hire somebody who's going to be an assistant store manager, I would give them, they wouldn't be an employee, I would give them a higher role in the system. So another thing that one main thing that we have completely revamped and made so much better and more flexible in Neo has to do with roles and access rights. Roles and access rights are kind of a big, huge, confusing maze in Classic today. So we've taken the concept of who can do what and where and translated them into this new functionality called roles and access rights. Now, as a local manager, that's not something that you need to worry very much about, since this is something that the super user within your organization would configure. But the group settings would allow you to click into the group settings and look at your organization and see which staff members are part of your unit. And you could administer them here. Like, for example, if I wanted Ann Jones to be a local manager or an assistant local manager, for example, I could click on her name here and elevate her role. I'll show you another place to do it, but that's what you can do here. The flexibility that we've added in the system is that you can now be a local manager of several different units. There's a lot more flexibility of who can see what and where with access roles and rights in Neo. So for example, Classic is a little bulky in that if you needed to have access to more units than one, you would have to be elevated to a district manager in Classic. Now, instead in Neo, you would be a member of a group. So you could be a group member of Unit 1 and a group member of Unit 2, and you could administer and see both of them. But again, generally something that a super user within your organization would do for you. But you can manage your own staff. Now, another thing I just wanted to show under here, when I'm looking at group settings, rather, is devices. If your staff members are punching in and out in Web Punch, you know that you have to approve their device before they can do that. So that is something that you would do under group settings. If that's something that you do today, you would do it under group settings in Neo on the far right-hand side. So if I come in here, I can check a box to approve a device, or I can check them all on the top right. Now, a couple more things to highlight here. You can, a nice new feature in Quinyx, if you've noticed, if you need to change the language in Classic, today you have to log out, change the language, and then log back in. Now you can change the language right inside the application and you don't have to go out and in. So small improvement, but nice. I also wanted to show you this help option here. Very, very, very important as far as resources go for you. Now, this link takes me to the Quinyx support. Now, this is not something that as a local manager you are utilizing. That would be the support team is contacted by your internal super users, so not by you directly. However, what is interesting for you here is this link to Help Docs. So if you haven't yet seen our Help Docs application, take a look. Help Docs is our online manual. It has everything you want to know about Quinyx and probably then some. But if you see here, it has a whole section on those of you who are moving to Neo. And it has also all of the articles of how do I create a schedule, etc. Another thing that we have in here, which is very interesting for you. Let's see where it is. If I go back to the homepage, the news and release notes. So with Neo, rather, again, like I said, we are developing Neo at a rapid pace. We have bi-weekly releases. So new functionality is coming into the system very quickly. What you as a local manager can do here is look at the release notes. If there's something new in the system that looks interesting or something you don't recognize, you can always go in and see all of the release notes, everything that we've done since the last release in each version that comes out. So a hot tip for you there to take a look at our help docs. So that is the help option. Help. And then we have the send us feedback. I also wanted just to show you this. Send us feedback. This has to do with if you have any suggestions of how we can improve the system. You can, with the feedback button, send a message that goes directly to our product development team. So Carl and his team get these emails and they look at and consider all of the feedback. Now, we already have thousands of Neo users, so the feedback is getting, there's a lot of it, which is great. But my point is, the product team might not reply to your suggestion right away, but they will reply. And just to be clear, send us feedback. That's not for you to send questions about the system. Questions about the system should be answered either via you looking it up on Help Docs or going to your system, the super user within your organization to answer questions. So this is just how can we improve the system? Any suggestions or feedback you have for us, you can send directly through Neo. And then we have the log out. So let me go through a little bit about the People's tab. If I click on People, this, if you're adding staff members in the system today, this is really no different. You add a staff member with a button here. You see all the main information. So who it is, the badge number, the email address, what agreements they have attached to them. If you are currently utilizing our digital signature functionality, it works exactly like it does in Classic. You would just click the star to initiate a digital signature for a new contract. And it will go through all the same processes that it does in Classic. So nothing has changed as far as that's concerned. and then what unit and section they belong to and what role they have. Again, remember over here under group settings, I said that you can elevate Anne, for example, to become an assistant local manager or a local manager if you needed to. You can also do it here. So if you wanted to give Anne another role, you click on employee here and say that you want to add the role. And I say that I want for Christine's HQ, I want Anne to become an assistant local manager. Another improvement that's been made is you can set a start and an end date on a role. So for example, Axel Rose, which is me in this case, I'm going on a long vacation this summer. And while I'm gone, I want Anne to be my backup. So for that particular period of time that I'm on vacation, I can elevate Anne's role. And then once I'm back, we have an end date. She goes back to being an employee. So you have a start and an end date of roles that you can set in the system too, which is a nice new feature. The sharing employees, if Anne is going to be working at other places, this is currently actually not where you do that. I'll show you where you would share an employee if Anne needed to work somewhere else. So some improvements also that we've made when you're adding a brand new employee is that you know that in Classic today you have to add what we call the staff card. So you go to one menu and click add and you fill out all the information. Then you have to go to a completely different menu to remember to associate that person to an agreement template. So we've tried to streamline that process also. When you add a new person, you get the most common fields that you need to fill in. So all the same ones that are required: first, last name, email address, and a badge number. And if I scroll down here, you on the very first screen, choose what agreement template this new person should be associated to. So you won't forget. And also the employment rate. So the most common, the most important things that you need to fill out when you add a new employee are directly there on the first couple fields of adding a new person. Obviously, if I scroll down and you need to add more detail, you can go through these fields to add more detail. And this is also, when I said I'd come back to that, if you need to share somebody to another location, you would come in the staff card here and make them shareable to whatever other units the person should be allowed to pick up shifts. Now, currently you do that within the staff card, and this is, you know, so that Anne or the person you're doing it for would see the shifts on the other unit in their mobile app, as well as allow the other manager to see the person to be able to schedule. What we will do in the future, and we'll make sure that you obviously have all the release notes and all the information that you need. What we will do in the future is you will in the future be sharing the employee from here. So it's just a matter of time when that will happen, but we'll keep everyone informed. For now, you share an employee in the staff card. So if I click on a person, I share them under this menu option here. So if I click it, I just clicked into an existing person here. So let me just show you that again. I click into an existing person. I have the people details. So all of the personal information on the left. And then if I need to add a new agreement or change an agreement, etc., I can click on this other tab here to just change an agreement or pick a new one or change the employment rate or whatever it is that you need to do. You can search for staff members in the search option. You can also, if you want to look at someone who's inactive, for example, or anyone that has agreements that have expired, you can go in the display drop down to show that. So that is what's new with people. We are not using really staff categories anymore. We're moving away from staff categories into the ideas of roles. You have a role in Quinyx, and then you're a member of a group. So units, districts, and sections. Let's move on to scheduling. So how do you schedule in the system? So you are currently in Classic used to adding templates. Generally, fixed schedules are probably what most of you do, or you're adding shifts directly into the schedule. So there's 3 ways to do scheduling in the system in Classic: fixed schedules, templates, and ad hoc shifts in the schedule. So what we have done with Neo is that we've taken the concepts of templates and fixed schedules and rolled them into one new concept called a base schedule. So a base schedule works pretty much like a fixed schedule does. However, in Classic, you would have one fixed schedule per person. But in Neo, you have all of your staff members in one base schedule. Now, you can, if you want to, have several base schedules in your system. Maybe you would want to, if you change your schedule, maybe you want to have a winter-based schedule and a summer-based schedule. That's fine. Maybe you would want to have a base schedule for your monthly salaried employees and another base schedule for your hourly ones. That's fine too. But really, there's only a need to have one base schedule for your unit. So let me show you how we would build a base schedule. And I can also say before, just as a side note, we have the ability at Quinyx to help you migrate the fixed schedules that you have created in Classic already, to migrate them into a base schedule in Neo. So if you're worried, if you've spent hours and hours pulling your hair out, making the most amazing fixed schedules ever, and you want to keep them, that is fine. Just have a conversation with your super user and we can migrate the fixed schedules into base schedules in Neo. Or you start from scratch and you take the opportunity to learn about base schedules. Maybe you even take the opportunity to think that now, okay, let me try to make my schedule better. So when you log into here, you will have an empty screen. I've already been working some in mine, or Axel has rather, so there are some already there, but I'm going to show you how to create one from scratch. Okay, so if you think about a fixed schedule, you create a fixed schedule, and then the second step is to roll it out into the calendar, right? Third step is to publish. A base schedule works exactly the same way. You create it, you roll it out, and lastly, you publish for everyone to see it. So when I create a brand new base schedule here, I need to give it a name, and that's up to you, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it Axel's base. And then you choose the template period. What is the rolling period? What is the reoccurring pattern of how people work in my unit? Do they work every other weekend? Well, then I probably have a 2-week rolling period. Currently in the system, we have the ability to add a base schedule that's up to 8 weeks rolling. However, we do know, and basically that covers, I want to say like 95% of our customer base. However, we are aware that some of you have a need to do longer template periods. So I can't exactly say when, but there will be the opportunity or the ability rather to add longer template periods in future releases. Another great reason to keep track of the release notes that come out. So if you currently have a template period that's longer than 8 weeks and you want to start using Neo, you basically have two options. You could either continue to roll things out via Classic. The databases for Classic and Neo are exactly the same. Anything that you do in Neo will be in Classic. Any schedule, anything in the schedule that you do in Classic will be in Neo. So they're both live and active in the same database. So you could roll out in Classic, but then do your day-to-day work in Neo, for example. Alternatively, if you have maybe I don't know, a 12-week rolling period, you could be creative and create one base schedule that's 8 weeks and another one that's 4 weeks, and then rotate them until we have the functionality to add longer ones. But anyway, I'm going to add a 2-week template period to show you how that's done, and I'm going to say create new. So this is my base schedule. I'm going to click in to it, and I basically have a clean slate 2-week template to work with. So what I would start to do, I have all of my employees here. I have whatever you have scheduled versus whatever they should be scheduled according to their agreement in this 2-week period. So if I, for example, go in and say that, if I click on add, one shift, I'm going to start with my employee Marie's schedule. She works the front desk shift on Mondays, Tuesdays, Friday, and Saturday of week 1. And then on the second week, she works Monday, Friday, and Sunday, for example. And I save it, and I'm done with Marie. If I look again, I see how many hours are scheduled versus how many hours she should be scheduled. So I'm a little bit off, obviously, as of yet. What I also could do then is if I click on these little, it's here, this little more options menu, I can say that I have another employee who works exactly like Marie, or maybe I have even more than one employee. I have several employees that work like Marie, but they stagger weeks. So Marie's week 1 is actually Helena and Sabina's week 2. So I just choose the week and save it, and all the shifts are copied the same, but they stagger weeks. I can also click on a shift, or excuse me, pick a shift, select a shift by using the little hand option. And what it does, it saves it down here as a little on the clipboard, if you will. And I can go ahead and either move or copy. So this is another sort of replacing the drag and drop in the views. I can copy it to different cells in here. Also, if I click on a cell, I have a plus sign. I can choose a shift type or whatever else I want to add. Whatever warnings you have set up in the system, you get the warnings right away. So improvements that have been done also with rolling out fixed schedules is that you get the warning sooner than actually when you roll it out. So here I have a warning for no break, but I'll go ahead and approve it anyway. If I go ahead and let me do that again and be more clear. I can obviously either create the shift anyway or choose not to. Those are my options there. So I can copy between employees. If I mess up, I don't want Sabina to work at all, I could delete everything and start over for Sabina. I could move her row to another employee, and then I can go and, with the plus sign, add shift by shift. But generally, I would say for one person, you would choose the person and then add whatever shifts they should be working in the 2-week period, very, very quickly and easily. Also, maybe you have unassigned shifts in your base schedule. I don't know beforehand. I have a need for a bunch of shifts, but I don't know beforehand who's going to be working. I can also add unassigned shifts. So I can say that, for example, I need 2 front desk shifts on Mondays and Tuesdays of week 1. Excuse me, 3. And I can quickly add those unassigned shifts for week 1. So again, you can see how you're doing, comparing how much you've scheduled the person enough or too little by looking at the numbers to, underneath the person's name. We also have an option over here for the display to look at statistics. And the statistics option shows you some numbers. Depending on, you can also choose the dates. So it overlays the current weeks, and then you can see what's already scheduled, what's already worked, but also what's optimal. Really, what's another great thing in here, and I don't know if, here we go, hours in the base schedule. So if you're looking for the total number of hours in your base schedule, you can see that on the bottom left, but then also totals per day. The numbers I saw here, when I looked at the first view, I can see in a graph form. So if I want to make sure that I'm doing good as far as optimal hours go, I can compare these numbers here. And then also, if I'm more of a numbers person, I can click and see the same information in more of an Excel spreadsheet type of view. But the total number of hours that I've put into my base schedule, into my template, and then per day. I can also filter for specific employees. If I want to make sure that Marie, we have all the hours, for example, that we need for her, we can filter for an employee or shift type, etc. We're going to talk a lot more about filters here in a minute. Then if you wanted to sort the base schedule in some other fashion, you can. It sorts by start time, but if you wanted it by employee, you could do that too. Roll out is obviously step 2 once you're happy. And then before I do that, let me just show you that if you weren't happy and you wanted to start from scratch, you could delete everything that you've done and start over. So the next step is to roll it out. If I click on roll out, this means I want to transfer my template sort of into the schedule, right? I choose my dates and my start week. This is very much like what you're doing. Actually, it's exactly like what you're doing in Classic. Pick the dates and say roll out. Now I'm not going to do this right here. So kind of like someone cooking food on TV, I've prepped a little bit. So what would happen then when you roll out is any warning, if there are warnings, just like in Classic, you get warnings depending on what you've set up in your agreement templates. And if there's something that is not rolled out, if there are warnings that you need to handle, it'll tell you. And if I click into where the schedule where I have my warnings, it'll tell me over on the right-hand side that I have 7 warnings and what they are. It tells me, well, obviously I can make a choice for all the warnings. I can do it per person for all of Axel's warnings, for example, or I could do it shift by shift. So either I say, yes, I want to roll it out anyway, even though I'm breaking the rules of the agreement. I can say, don't roll out these shifts. Or again, same option I have in Classic, I can choose to roll them out anyway, just not assigned to Axel and Marie in this case. So I don't know if you've ever in Classic ended up with, you know, a schedule full of empty shifts because you were too quick with all the warnings in Classic. This, I think, is vastly improved in order to have that not happen. You make clear choices here what you do with all the warnings before you roll them out. Okay, so once I have rolled everything out from my base schedule, I am then working in my schedule view. So if I click into my schedule view, let's talk about the schedule. I'm taking into the daily view, but let me go into a week just to show you what that looks like. So this is what my weekly view as far as the schedule is concerned goes to. Just to finish the whole base schedule process, right? You create, you roll out, and the last step to make it visible to your employees is to publish. The publish function is all the way on the far right-hand side, the more options menu. If I click on that there, we have the publish option. And again, it works just like it does in Classic. So how far do your employees actually see their schedules in the app and in the staff portal is whatever you have published. Okay. So let's take a look at the schedule itself. All the daily work that I do, absences and approvals, testing. We're going to go through all of that, but looking at my weekly view, I have my unassigned shifts at the top. I have my people as we go. And if I look at a person here, I have scheduled hours versus nominal hours. So people who are, this person is, for example, scheduled too much, right? Which is interesting as far as this might generate overtime. And then we have people, the -4 here, and she is not scheduled enough. So it looks at scheduled hours versus nominal hours being whatever it says in their contract that they should work for a week, in my case. So if you needed a little bit more information there, you could, oopsie, hang on, you could click on, no, I'm sorry. The little arrow here. The arrow here would take you into what we call the employee KPIs. So if you are looking at these sort of numbers in Classic today, you would go into the scheduled staff view and either hover on their name or click into the detailed view. But here I click on the little down arrow and I see whatever they're scheduled in the selected period. So the week that I'm looking at, scheduled versus nominal, worked versus nominal, and then expected versus nominal or contracted. So whatever Anne has worked and punched up until yesterday, plus whatever she's scheduled for the rest of the week. So the selected period is my week, right? The schedule period is whatever you have in your agreement templates. You might have a monthly schedule period or some other period that you look at time as far as overtime and additional time and everything else. That is the schedule period in the agreement, in Anne's agreement. And then some of you might use a balance period, for example, to look at a yearly time, for example, if you are using a balanced period, you would see that information in there as well. So that's when I click on the little down arrow. So, and the other thing I was doing was if I wanted to look at time trackers, if you are using time trackers in Quinyx for maybe vacation balances or overtime, etc., you can click on the person's name to see the balance. And then you can also select a from and a to date to see the historical transactions that have happened. I also have three little, again, the more options. I can delete the whole row for Anne. I can move these shifts to another person. So kind of a mass edit for the week. So moving shifts or whatever I'm deleting shifts, it always looks at the period that I have displayed at the moment. So right now, anything I do down here would affect the week that I'm looking at. So then we have the shifts, and we also have the associated punch. So kind of like the time card that you're used to in the time view, that is all in one schedule view in Neo. So the shift and the punch, and we'll get to the punches here in a little while. So we have all the shifts. If I move across here, any notices of interest show up in green, just like in Classic. Any vacation requests that have come in that I have not yet approved show up as the grayed out, basically. And then, sorry for going all over the place, but an approved vacation, or excuse me, a leave, any kind of leave that is in the system already is black. Always black. A couple other notable things here in the schedule itself. Shift exists. This means that this person, Christine, is my employee, but she is scheduled elsewhere on Saturday. So she's shared to another unit and she has a shift on Saturday somewhere else. As opposed to Rick down here, Rick with the little lines behind him, he doesn't actually belong to me. His home unit is somewhere else, but I have borrowed him. So this is the difference between some person that belongs to me that is working elsewhere and a person who doesn't belong to me, but is working for me on Saturday. So that's basically what's going on visually in the schedule. But if I start at the top and work my way to the right, on the top left, I have a drop-down menu where I can add shifts, absences, or punches. That's completely fine. But as you know, in Classic also, we have several ways to do the same thing. If I was going to add a shift, I would probably just go straight to the cell of the person and the day where I want to add a shift and just stick it right in there. I choose the person, the shift type, and I save it. Now I'm missing a skill. Whatever warnings that you have that are used to will also always appear when you're working in the schedule view. I'm sorry, punch missing because I added it yesterday. So same thing with an absence. If I click into a shift, I can add an absence directly in the shift. So, which is actually a good example. Let's do that. So Christine had a shift yesterday, but punch is missing. She was actually sick. She never came in. I can click into the shift and go to the more options. And if I scroll down, I have the ability to add an absence. And it'll allow me to choose the dates and times. It allowed me to choose the absence type. I'll say that she was sick. And then also, I have the time tracker balances here, which, you know, in another example is interesting. For example, if I'm approving vacation requests, I can, before I do it, make sure that the person has enough vacation to take. For example, If you're using absence schedules, you also have the ability to choose that here. Shifts in this period, whatever default you have set to a particular leave type. In my case, if somebody is sick, we want to unassign the underlying shift, but you also have the option to delete it or reassign it to another person, just the way that you have in Classic today. So those are my options here, but again, I kind of prefer personally to work directly on the schedule. Then we have the date pickers. What period do I want to look at? I can choose a day, a week, a month, or I can choose maybe 2 weeks or something custom. And you just pick 2 dates. So all of this here is picking what period you want to see. I can go from week to week, for example, or month to month by using my little arrows. If I continue on towards the right, I have the other statistics display. So which is maybe even more interesting here. Remember in the base schedule, we could see the total number of hours scheduled in the base schedule. But in the schedule itself, if I click on statistics, I'll see some summary information of various things that I can choose. If I click on this pencil, you can choose whatever numbers are interesting for you. So maybe you're not currently using budget and forecast. You don't optimize the schedule via Quinyx. Well, then I can choose to not see the optimal hours. So for example, scheduled hours, worked hours, and leave hours. I'm very interested in those things. So I choose those. If you have staff costs in the system, if you have forecasted sales, etc., you can also choose to see those or not. So whatever I pick here, I can see them as summary information towards the bottom. Or if you're a graphs person, again, you can compare them in pretty graphs, the hours and the sales and costs. And if you click into a day, obviously you'd see per hour. And with Neo forecast, we can actually get down to a forecast on a 15-minute level. So again, my graphs, and again, if you're a numbers person, you can choose to display these numbers with totals on the left and then per day. So display and statistics, very useful information, maybe even especially if you're using budget and forecast via Quinyx. Something else here that's going to be vital in your day-to-day work is, or are the filters. In the system, basically the schedule view, we have schedule, we have time, we have punches, we have absences, everything is in the same view. However, you're not always going to want to look at everything. So what you can do is you can create filters in the system, and you can filter for basically anything. You can filter for shift type, employee status, absence type, home unit. I only want to see the people that belong to me, for example, specific employees. Something that's very interesting, maybe when you're doing your attestation, your approval work, you would want to have a filter for any punches that you haven't yet attested. Also, for punches, you can have a filter for any warnings that show up. So the filter is something that's very, very useful. So when I create a filter, I can save my filter. No, I'm Axel. I'll save it as Axel Rose. And then next time I want to come in and use the same filter, I can just go and click on it directly here. So you can choose to save your filters till next time once you've found a good view, depending on what it is you want to do that day. And then I can go in and clear the filters if I want to go back to the original schedule view. So the filters are, again, very, very important in your day-to-day work, depending on how big your unit is as well, how many employees you're working with. Then, so the filter option, save your filters to make your work easier. Then we have the sort option. The system is default sorting by start time of the shift, but you also have the ability to sort rather by employee name. Or another cool new thing is you can sort by the difference of scheduled versus nominal hours. Meaning if I did that, I can get all the people that are working the least in the scheduled period at the top of my screen. So if I have a lot of empty shifts to assign to people, for example, I can see all the people who are scheduled the least at the top. Moving on here, I have my shift notification center. This is all of the information over on the dashboard, right? Notices of interest, leaves, shift bookings. To handle all of those, you in the schedule will navigate to your little bell with the number here. You have 7 things that you need to do as a manager. And if I click in here again, it'll tell me exactly what it is I'm doing. And there's shifts to approve. Marie has applied for an open shift. I can approve or deny. Same person has applied for vacation, etc., etc. So things that you need to deal with are in the shift notification center and can be dealt with over there. And then far right, again, we looked at this, publishing a schedule, locking a schedule, if that's something that you currently do. Generally, payroll would do that, but if that's something that you do, it's there. You can attest all and unattest all, not something that I would recommend. Obviously, you would want to be much more diligent and look at the actual punches. But that function is there, as it is in Classic, the big green check mark. And then delete shifts. If you wanted to empty out this schedule and start from scratch, you could mass delete everything. And again, if I were to use this, it obviously tells me, are you sure you want to do this? Because it could be bad. But it would delete anything that I'm looking at in the time period that I've selected. So delete all the shifts for this particular week. Okay. So we looked at how to add absences. You can click into a shift and choose more options and add an absence. You can add an absence from the top left-hand side. Same way, you just have to pick and choose the date and the person. Or remember, if they are actually applying for vacations or absences, you can click in there or, your bell up here. So absences, pretty straightforward. And the last thing to talk about here is the approving of times. So again, you always have the shift and you have a punch. Let me go back to last week. So how do you approve or attest? You do it the same way. You do a checkbox, just like you do in Classic. You see if there is something red, if there's a red frame around a punch, that's indicating that there is some sort of warning. So in this case, the punch is longer than the shift. So Anne's shift ended at 6, but she didn't punch out until 9. So what does that mean? Well, perhaps that means that this will generate overtime for Anne. whatever warnings you currently have in Classic today, you will have the same warnings in Neo. The difference is here in Classic, you do have the ability to choose different colors for different warnings. In Neo, all the warnings are red. So, and obviously if you have more than one warning, you click in and see what the warning is. But you have the same capabilities that you do in Classic as far as editing a punch. If you click into a punch, I can just say that this person punched out at 4, but I don't know, I need to change the time to 3 for whatever reason. So you can edit punches and then approve a punch by checking the box. Now, before you approve something, you would probably want to double check, like if you click into a time card in the current system, you want to double check maybe what salary types are being generated, right? So will this generate, or what would this generate for Anne if I approve her punch that goes to 9 o'clock? If I click on here, I see this little menu, the 2 dots and the little lines, which is probably not the technical name for it, but the salary type overview. If I click in there, I'll be able to, for a punch, specifically for Anne's punch here, see that she will get 9 hours of monthly salary and 3 hours of overtime as my system is configured. And then I can just look at the next one and the next one before I approve them to make sure what's actually being generated by the system. And once I'm comfortable, again, I can check the box. If you ever, by the way, are manually adding salary types, there's a little plus sign here. Not maybe very common for a lot of you, but you can do that if that's something you do today with a plus sign. You can also, if I come over here, attest everything for Anne for the week, if we wanted to approve all of her shifts. And notice also that we have a green frame around Anne for the week then. That means that everything for her for this week has been approved. So visually, it's quick and easy to make sure that everything has been approved for the week. However, or whatever, again, whatever period you're in. However, keep in mind my suggestion of creating filters to make sure that you don't have anything left that's unattested. Create a filter for unattested and make sure that it's empty when you do filter for it. And that way you know that you've attested everything you need to. I think that's it as far as the schedule piece goes. Carl, anything to add? Still with me?
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything specific to add. I think we've gone through everything.
Okay, perfect. Let me just quickly also, before we open up for questions, show you the analytics. All of the reports that you have in the reports tab under reports and statistics in Classic, you have under the analytics tab in Neo. If you are missing a report here that you use on a daily basis, you can still find it in Classic for now. We basically what we did is we added the most commonly used reports into Neo first, and then we'll add the rest of them as we go. But this should basically cover your needs as far as we're concerned. Okay, so we are going to open up for questions. We have about 25 minutes to answer all of your questions, so feel free to type them in and we'll just go through them. And if you don't want to stay, thank you so much for joining us. And you know what? Wait, sorry. let me backtrack a little bit before we open up for questions. I want to make sure that everybody has what they need. I see so many raised hands, which is great. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me talk about what you guys, as far as tools are concerned, what you have available to you. What resources do you have? So again, to reiterate, web.quinyx.com is the new interface. You can use them in parallel to Classic as you're getting used to the system. Keep in mind that we have this year to use Classic, but we will start shutting Classic down probably before then. So it will behoove you to try to start using Neo as soon as possible. We have a website for you, quinyx.com/Neo Managers, with all the information that you need about transitioning to Neo. So resources, what do you need to do, what has changed, etc., etc. If you want to read up a little bit, we have a whole website for you, quinyx.com/Neo, /Neo-Managers. Quinyx Help Docs. I showed you Quinyx Help Docs. You can get through it on the far right-hand side via the Help menu. Something that I also wanted to make sure that I had showed you in Help Docs, if I go to make the move to Neo, this is sort of brand new. We've added a big, long FAQ article in here. So if there's something that you're questioning or something that I didn't answer for you today or something to that nature, you have a frequently asked questions article. I highly suggest perusing through this because we've spent a lot of time on this and there are a lot of questions. So highly recommended to look through. And again, Help Docs is a huge resource in and of itself. Then what do you do if you have support questions? So I'm afraid you don't contact me or Carl. You don't send questions via the feedback option in Neo. So if you have questions, we ask that you contact your internal super user, whoever is the Quinyx administrator within your organization. And if they can't help you, or if your colleagues can't help you, then your super user has the ability to contact our support team to help you with any further questions.